इंडिया स्पीक्स डेली को सब्सक्राइब करें, उसके बेल आइकन को ज़रूर दबाएं यदि आपको इसकी पत्रकारिता पसंद हो। धन्यवाद।
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to India Speaks Daily. The first ever complete budget by the BJP-led NDA government since it came back to power the second time is out. And quite predictably, the left liberal media of the country is already lashing out at the budget. The left liberal media of the country is already criticizing the budget, spewing venom at the budget. Talking less about the things that the budget has proposed and talking more and more about the things that the budget has not done, that the budget has not proposed. So quite predictably, the criticism is on the line of the things that the budget hasn't done enough to accelerate growth, that the budget hasn't done enough to drive investment in order to take the economy forward, etc., etc. All the magic catchwords of the economics brigade, which are mostly incomprehensible to the common people, which mostly bypass the ears of the common people, are being used by the media. And the more incomprehensible the jargon, the more intellectual, the more intelligent the criticism sounds, and such has been always the norm. In the hyper-real world of GDP, growth rate, fiscal deficit, etc., people see the future of a country, especially the future of third world countries, developing countries like India, completely premised on the arbitrary evaluation of multilateral institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, the United Nations. The reports by these multilateral institutions are the sort of tainted prisms, the tainted glasses through which we see the economic future of a country rise and fall and completely, and this is more sort of blown out of proportion by the media, where the economic future of a country like India is completely seems to be predicated on arbitrary ratings by these multilateral institutions. And an important point that we would like to make here is that a huge percentage of these ratings do not take into account the mechanisms of the informal economy. And when when it is said that in India unemployment figures are rising at a huge rate, at alarming levels, and what is taken into account mostly by making these evaluations is the formal economy, the formal employment sector, which is in the record. But a huge percentage of Indian economy, in fact, at least 70% of people are still employed in the informal sector, in the unorganized sector. And it is this unorganized sector which is not documented. It is this unorganized sector which forms the bulk of the Indian economy. And therefore, a lot of these international evaluations, when making comments on India's growth rate or GDP, do not take into account this unorganized sector. So all these readings, these World Bank, IMF readings, even though I'm not any authority on economics, but common sense tells us that since the unorganized sector doesn't really figure out in these readings so much, these readings have to be taken with a pinch of salt. So the budget precisely tries to subvert this paradigm of pleasing the global hegemonic order, of playing to the tunes of global multilateral institutions. It precisely subverts the paradigm by being a Swadeshi budget, by prioritizing the local over the global, and by prioritizing the idea of lifting millions out of poverty, and by prioritizing the interests of the country's poor and the marginalized over any sort of giving big sops to the big industry, big corporate lobby, etc. So as the newspapers have rightly pointed out, this is not a big bang budget, because it has no big bang announcements on FDI, no lucrative sops to the industry, to the corporate sector, etc. On the contrary, the budget has more things, and the budget is everything for the common man. And at the center of this budget is a hitherto neglected sector of the Indian economy, and something which formed the crux of the Indian economy a long time back. That is the rural sector, the agricultural sector. So the budget has a vision, a roadmap of revamping the agrarian economy, of revamping the rural economy of the country, and the focus is not just on food grain production but also milk production and fisheries as well. So this is one of the focal points of the budget, which is in line with the Gandhian vision of empowering the local, of empowering the rural. And then the budget puts a phenomenal focus on the development of countries' infrastructure, be it roads, ports, and along with this focus on development of infrastructure, what the budget also does, and this is a rather innovative feature of the budget, is that it creates a vision, it creates a roadmap and concrete schemes as well for putting the youth of India at the center of the infrastructural development of the country, thus generating employment opportunities for them. And in this context, the budget specifically says that the National Skill Development Mission would actually start imparting specific skills to the youth, which are in tune with the infrastructural development needs of the country. And therefore, let's just have a look at this vision. It is not just talking about solving the problem of unemployment, but it is talking about solving the problem of unemployment in an innovative way by linking the youth to the nation building exercise, to the glorious nation building exercise of the country, and not just talking about giving them 9 to 5 corporate slavery jobs. So this is the phenomenal vision of this budget, and this completely sort of answers those who have been criticizing the Narendra Modi government, especially over its supposed inability to create jobs. And as I said, a lot of jobs in the Indian context are not visible. These are there in the informal sector, and the government is now already taking many initiatives to bring the informal sector, unorganized sector into the mainstream framework. However, now coming back to the budget, another most important component of this budget is the focus on science and technology. And this focus on science and technology, focus on artificial intelligence, information technology, analytics, big data is there. It's embedded in every scheme of the budget, embedded in announcement made in every field, be it healthcare, education, or be it agriculture, be it any other field for that matter. Because over the past couple of years, we have seen that the Narendra Modi government, the BJP-led NDA government, has been taking many initiatives to use artificial intelligence, to use science and technology for the betterment of lives of people, to use artificial intelligence and big data to improve the socio-economic conditions of the country, to evaluate the various socio-economic indicators. And in this area, the government has indeed actually made commendable progress. Because as compared to countries like China and the US, our investment in artificial intelligence and big data is still very low. So the budget is trying to sort of rectify this. The budget is trying to address this by incorporating science and technology into every component of its financial planning. So this was a broad vision of the budget, and now just a quick look through at the significant things that the budget has done in several sectors for the welfare of the people. So we would start with agriculture, and within the agricultural sector, the budget has made a phenomenal plan. The budget has laid out an ambitious, phenomenal plan to harness the use of solar power for powering the farms, powering the hand pumps, and by in keeping in line with the objective of doubling farmers' income by 2022, the budget has proposed to provide 20 lakh farmers of India, and that's a huge number, for setting up stand-alone solar pumps. It has also proposed helping another 15 lakh farmers solarize their grid-connected pump sets. And then there's also a unique initiative to enable farmers with barren land, who have a land that is not otherwise fit for cultivation, there's a proposal to enable these farmers to give them facilities to produce solar power on their farms, and this solar power in turn through the grids can then be used to power the lands of other farmers, and therefore giving these farmers otherwise with a barren land an opportunity to earn their livelihood, giving these farmers an employment opportunity, and also envisaging a cooperative model, a village cooperative model, so a return harking back to the Gandhian vision again. And then the budget proposes new schemes to revive local self-help groups, especially with regard to women. So basically many schemes to revive the rural economy. And then there are a number of innovative measures. An ambitious project is the announcement of a special train, Kisan Rail. Now, Kisan Rail will be a special train which will be carrying perishables throughout the country, and thus addressing the transportation problem, addressing the problems of transportation and storage and logistics which ail the Indian agricultural system, and is addressing to a large extent the issue of food security, the problem of food security. The Kisan Rail is an innovative measure that has been announced in the budget. And then a special flight service, Krishi Udan, is to be also launched at the national and international level. And this is to especially harness the potential of India's northeastern states and India's tribal regions, to harness the potential of their agri-products. Then fish production is to be raised to 200 lakh tons by 2020-23. And milk processing capacity is also to be doubled by 2025. So now moving on from the agricultural to the health and education sectors. Within these sectors also the budget has made some significant proposals. In the health sector, hospitals will be set up entire 3 cities under the PPP mode, the public-private partnership mode. And in this scheme, the cities which do not have any hospitals currently, that have been impaneled under the Ayushman Bharat scheme, will be given preferences as far as the setting up of these hospitals is concerned. Thus the government in this budget is trying to address the issue of lack of healthcare access to everybody, especially to the country's poor who cannot afford private hospitals. A process which it had already started through Ayushman Bharat, and now with this budget, with the provision of opening more and more hospitals through the PPP mode, it is taking this scheme forward. Within the education sector too, there are some very new and interesting announcements. For example, an online education program will now be started, and certain universities will be selected for this purpose. An online full-fledged education program, a formal education program, which is meant for those who do not have access to the formal education system, which is offline. Somehow those who cannot afford going to colleges or universities, those who cannot afford education. So making education more accessible to everybody. And then another interesting thing which the government has announced, and this is something which is also increasing India's soft power, with the vision of increasing India's soft power. And this is the proposal to conduct INSAT exams for African and Asian students who want to be admitted to institutes of higher education in India. So the INSAT exams, just like the exams conducted by various European universities in the US and the UK, are going to be an Indian equivalent of these kind of exams. And this is something which is again reasserting the soft power of India, and this is to structure India as a brand. It increases the brand value of India. And then there's a huge focus on the revival of the country's manufacturing sector in the budget. The Make in India initiative, a huge thrust the government is laying out, the government is giving to the manufacture of mobile phones, electronic devices, as well as semiconductor devices, and various incentives are being given to manufacturers in this regard. Many incentives have been introduced to startups as well, some tax concessions as well. Then a national technical textiles mission has been proposed to boost indigenous manufacturing of technical textiles. Then Nirvik mission has been announced to boost exports. Then there's a scheme on reversion of duties and taxes on exported products, which will be launched this year. digitally refund to exporters the duties levied. And through this, every district will become an export hub. And then there is the budget's big focus on data and artificial intelligence, something about which I have talked about previously. And within this, a lot of concrete measures have been announced. Private companies will be now allowed to set up huge data centers across the country, which will become sort of paradigms of research in big data and artificial intelligence. And then another important breakthrough announcement is that the budget proposes 8,000 crore rupees. 8,000 crore rupees have been exclusively allotted for the development of India's national mission on quantum technologies and applications over the next 5 years. So this is a huge emphasis on big data, on analytics, on artificial intelligence. And just connected with this is the budget's announcement, Nirmala Sitharaman's announcement to do away with the mess of manual scavenging that's plaguing the country, with the issue of manual scavenging that has also led to so many deaths over the past couple of years, unfortunately. So India would now gradually completely switch over to automated scavenging, scavenging using robots, cleaning of sewers using robots, and automated cleaning of sewers, so that manual scavenging can be gradually done away with. Then there's a lot of focus on tourism in the budget, and within tourism, at least 5 spots have been identified. 5 archaeological sites have been identified that are to be developed as iconic sites with on-site museums. And last not but the least, the budget is a relief for common people, as now common people who are earning up to 5 lakh rupees per annum, they don't have to pay any tax. And above 5 lakh rupees per annum, also the government has done a significant thing, and this has been done in the budget for the first time. New slabs have been introduced, and according to these new slabs, the tax rates have been slashed down for every slab by a considerable extent, by as much as 10%, and you can avail yourself of these new tax slabs even if you're earning more than 5 lakh rupees, provided you do not seek any tax exemptions under the current existing schemes. So for the first time, the government has given this option to the middle class people. For the first time, the government has given this option to the public to avail of these slabs with less, where they have to pay less tax, provided they are not evading tax, provided they are not availing themselves of any tax saving schemes. Of course, right now this is not mandatory. This is totally up to the people. But the whole point and the reason why the government is doing so is the government wants to drive up consumption, and the middle class is a vehicle to drive consumption forward. So now, evaluating the budget within all these broad frameworks, it is a Swadeshi budget, a pro-farmer budget, a pro-middle class budget. And one of the most important, significant breakthroughs of the budget, and this is something which hasn't been really discussed in detail by the media, is that by talking about reviving the rural economy, by putting its focus on the revival of the rural economy, the budget is indirectly trying to address the problems of urbanization, the problems of migration from rural to urban areas, which have led to the creation of ghettos in India's towns and cities, which have led to massive problems of population explosion, as well as a huge pressure on the limited resources in India's towns and cities. So urbanization is the root of many socio-economic problems of urban India. And the reason that urbanization exists, the reason that there's such a huge scale migration, is because there are hardly any employment opportunities in India's villages. And by laying out a roadmap for an agrarian economy in which the youth will be involved at an employment level to form this economy, to take this economy forward, the budget is indirectly addressing this problem of urbanization. And this is a very important aspect of this budget. Then the budget is the first of its kind in India, which has a vision of asserting the soft power of India. And by putting focus on culture, by putting focus on tourism and sectors like health and education, the budget is now shifting its focus towards the soft power of India, and by insisting that the things will be done in the Indian way of things will be done the Indian way, the budget is asserting the soft power of India. The whole of West has attained this cultural hegemony, this cultural privilege, by the constant showcasing of this soft power. The unprecedented popularity and the unprecedented cultural hegemony and the economic might that it has brought to the United Kingdom of English language is a case in point. The way English language has become not just a tool of cultural hegemony but also a tool of economic hegemony by the United Kingdom is a case in point, and this is gradually that the West has spread its cultural hegemony, that the West is spreading its cultural hegemony. So it's time for India to widen the reach of its cultural hegemony. Now it's time for India to exert its soft power, and now it's time for India to show to the world that it is the Indian way of doing things. It is the India's soft power that is going to make its presence in the world. It is time for India to show to the world that it is no longer going to bow down to the pressures of multilateral economic institutions, that it is no longer going to be a slave to the interests of either the Europe or the US, and it is not going to be a slave to the interests of the big companies, the big corporate lobby. And by returning to a pro-farmer, by presenting a pro-farmer, pro-Swadeshi budget, and one that lays solid emphasis on the internal infrastructural development of the country, the government has made a start in the right direction.